This is Randy Sullivan, the host of Bourbon Real Talk. I grew up in a small town and went to a small church where everyone looked and thought like me. Over the years, I've gotten to know and love people from all different walks of life. This has made my world bigger and richer. The secret ingredient in forming those relationships was getting to know people's real stories. That helped me to identify with them, have compassion on them, and eventually develop a real connection with them. We live in a disconnected world today, and I want to do everything in my power to build connections between individuals who may not have attempted friendship otherwise. I've observed this happening in the bourbon community on its own because whiskey naturally brings people together. Bourbon Real Talk hopes to combine the world's new passion for bourbon into an opportunity to bring people together. We will share some whiskey knowledge, some good drams, and some real talk. So sit back, pour a drink, and open your hearts and minds. You might just find yourself feeling more connected to the people in the world around you, all fueled by bourbon. Hello, everybody out there in Bourbon Real Talk land. This is Randy Sullivan coming to you live from Ken Wimberly's amazing, not just real estate office, but entrepreneurial office, we're going to say. Ken is almost a serial entrepreneur. And he not only has had a very interesting life that we're going to dig into for anybody out there that's ever had any entrepreneurial desires. We are going to talk about what that journey may look like, and this should be a huge encouragement to you. But for any of you parents that are out there, Ken has had a major transition in his focus in life lately, and towards the end of this, we're going to talk about a tool that he's built to help increase connectedness in your families. So, but Ken, you are not a huge whiskey drinker, is that correct?
That's right. I'm typically more of a wine, a little bit of a beer drinker.
A little bit of a beer drinker, but you do occasionally try spirits. You had when I asked you if you'd ever had a bourbon that you liked, you said that your friend gave you Willet in the pretty bottle.
In the pretty,
right,
unique shaped bottle.
Yeah, it is actually shaped like the still that it's made out of, or made from, but that's rare because most bourbons are not made in that type of still. So that's why they use that bottle. Not only is it beautiful, but it's kind of represents the uniqueness of that whiskey. Truth be told, a lot of whiskey nerds that are out there poo-poo that whiskey a little bit. It's a little too floral for them. They don't like it when I bring this up, but I happen to like the whiskey. And a couple of years ago, I sent out a bunch of blind sample packs that had rye whiskey in it.
Yeah.
But I slipped that one bourbon in there because it's got a lot of like nutmeg type flavors and flavors that you'd maybe find more in a rye whiskey. And virtually no one rated it in last place. So I was like, haha, you do actually like this a little more than you'd like to admit.
Take that, haters.
Yeah. But they some people got mad at me for that, but people get mad at me for a lot of stuff. So, by the way, the podcast is explicit. So if you feel like cussing, knock yourself out. I probably will a little bit. So what I brought today was a product from the same company. This is also Willet Distillery, but this is their rye product, which they are pretty well known for. Their rye whiskeys a few years ago that were actually not made by them. Now they're newer. These bottles are made by Willet in their own still, but before they were buying distillate from other companies, what they call the non-distiller producer. And this is actually their distillate. It's just gotten to the point where they have enough to sell that it's above 4 years old.
Okay.
That's their own distillate. This I've had for about a year. So when this came out, it was 3 years old. But a lot of people think rye whiskey doesn't have to be aged as long as Kentucky bourbon. So I've had some rye whiskeys that were 2 years old that were really amazing. So we're going to let you try this up. If you don't like it, just pretend. And none of the whiskey nerds will notice when you're sipping or when you're not.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, but this has a lot of that same characteristic to it. So we'll just put this back here in the background unless in case one of us gets thirsty and needs some more. So typically what we do is we smell it up, see what we smell. And so their whiskeys have a lot of a floral component and some fruity notes as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting a little bit of chocolate on the nose, which I'm not sure I've had on one of their ryes before. But their rye whiskeys typically taste like Thanksgiving. So nutmeg, allspice, clove, those types of things. And typically I get a little bit of dill, like a dill pickle.
Okay.
And typically I'll get pine or like a pine needle. Do you sense any pine on the smelling it? No, that's okay. There are no wrong answers.
Yeah.
All right, so now we taste it up. I sure taste pine. But a lot of clove, nutmeg.
Yeah.
It's bold. And you got some water behind you. If you want to throw a little water in that, that would be okay. This one is 111 proof. So it's a little bit higher proof than most whiskeys that people drink that are not.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Okay, good. Well, it is in the same direction as the Willet pot still in terms of the bolder, floral flavors, spicier flavors coming through. But that's the characteristic of the grain. The rye adds a lot of spice, and so the bourbons that are most popular, not most popular, but most bourbons have some rye in them to give it a little bit more structure and flavor and some spiciness. Some of them are wheat, but the majority of them are rye. So anyway, it's good whiskey. So we're going to drink this while we talk.
I like it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Ken. So why don't you tell the people, because you've had, I don't know, I read your bio, something like 3 or 4 lifetimes. You've had multiple forays into different genres. So tell us a little bit about when you first got started as an entrepreneur in the business world.
Yeah. So in the business world, after college, my first non-entrepreneurial out of college was working for an insurance and investment company.
Okay.
So had all my series licenses, the 6, 7, 63, Group 1 health license. Did that for a couple of years out of college. And actually in college, when I was at TCU, I had worked as a pizza delivery driver for a place called Parati's Pizza. Mm-hmm. And it was some of the best, most wonderful pizza that I'd ever had. It was just incredible. And it was a small family-owned shop. And they ran it very laissez-faire. It was not very organized, super lax on the way they ran things, yet they ran a very successful business. And I got in discussions with them after graduating from college and started talking about what it would look like for us to franchise. Yeah, they didn't have a formal franchise plan, so it was more of a license agreement. Mm-hmm. And we came to an agreement on what we would do. And a buddy of mine that I was in the Navy with, we launched and started Parati's Pizza in Arlington, Texas by UTA. And ran that for 18 months. So that was my first foray into the entrepreneurial journey. It was like, let's start a pizza restaurant. And we had a rather grand plan for it. We wanted to open 5 locations. And after refining things with 5 locations, we wanted to get with the Parati family and come up with a franchise plan to then go and franchise the concept. Mm-hmm. So we were thinking big at the time, yet I look back on some of the things that we did or did not do at the time. Here's the ironic thing. So we ran that for 18 months and had to shut it down after 18 months. We'll get into that. But most of my mistakes that we made in there were real estate related mistakes, which is ironic since I've been doing commercial real estate for the last 18 years. Right. And that's what I do. But at the time, I knew nothing of commercial real estate. In fact, I had my residential realtor that sold me my first home. He helped me to find my commercial space. And he very candidly said, look, Ken, I don't know anything about the commercial world, but I'll do my best to help you. Right. And so we made a ton of mistakes. The biggest mistake we made was we took really about 3 times the space that we actually needed because we fell in love with the location. We took 4,500 square feet, which we really needed probably 1,500 square feet. The landlord was unwilling to subdivide the space, and I didn't know how to negotiate that. I didn't know that we could have done some things and financed some things and moved some bathrooms. Now I know things we could have done to have made that successful. Looking back, I'd probably still be in the pizza restaurant. So maybe I'm glad that I didn't know all that. But but taking that much space required more people, more equipment, more tables, more everything, more overhead, more electricity, pretty much more everything with that much space. And as time went on, we started off a little slower than we anticipated. Our sales grew month over month over month in the business, which was incredible. However, our expenses were high to start with. And 18 months later, we felt a little buried by our expenses. Although our sales were growing month over month, we had landed accounts with UTA. We had landed accounts with some child care facilities, delivering food to them. Our business internally was growing. Our delivery business was growing. So the trajectory was looking good on sales, yet our expenses had been so much higher. We honestly felt buried by debt, and we didn't know what to do to get out. We made a very tough decision to shut down the business about 18 months after we had been open. And I remember, really thinking through that, because it was a deep thought. We had employees, we had ourselves, we had our families, and to think through actually shutting that down, it was a big decision. And as we were contemplating that, we came into the office one morning, turned on all the TVs as we're getting ready. We turned on the TVs every morning. And as I turned on the TVs, all over the news were the Twin Towers with an airplane in the first tower, and was watching that as the airplane hit the second tower. And I called my partner. I was like, there are bigger problems in the world that we have right now. And it made me realize that as great of a problem as we thought we had, it was minuscule compared to the bigger problems in the world.
Sure.
And so we ended up shutting down the business and filing bankruptcy. It was Chapter 7 bankruptcy because all the debt was in our personal name. It was a really, really rough time in our lives to go through that. And then it was a rebuilding from there. I stayed in the restaurant business for another year. Went to work for a local chain called Razoo's. Worked as a general manager for Razoo's for a year. And towards the end of that year that I was working with them, kind of had an epiphany. I woke up one morning and I said, look, I'm working 70 hours a week. I was commuting back and forth from Mansfield to Irving, so 50 miles each way, back and forth, sometimes twice a day. If someone doesn't show up as a GM, you're the one
you gotta go
up there going. And, started doing the math. Based on what I'm making here, I'm making about minimum wage with all the hours I'm putting in. And said something's got to change. And I'd always wanted to be in the real estate business. And so I started looking into getting into the real estate business. The big impetus behind that was my wife at the time was pregnant, 8 months pregnant with our first child. And so I had this baby girl coming soon. And I said, I can't be working like this and never at home and have a baby girl coming at home.
Sure.
So I actually looked into getting into the residential side of things or the commercial real estate side of things. I was more drawn to commercial real estate, just the business aspect, the deal making. I'm a finance major. I'm into spreadsheets and numbers, and so that appealed to me. Went to work for a guy in Mansfield, and it was interesting. My interview with him went a little something like this. He said, Ken, he said, it's going to take you a long time to really get up to speed in the commercial real estate business. That it's a long journey. You can expect probably a year without making any money. We don't have a draw. You don't have a salary. You're going to need to bring your own computer. Like I said, you probably won't make any money for a year, but we'll set you up with office space and a phone in here. You won't be pigeonholed. We're a small shop, so we're not going to pigeonhole you into a particular asset class or thing you have to focus on. You can come in and be a self-starter. And somehow that sounded okay to me. I'd saved up a little bit of money in there, and my wife was working, and I said, you know what, let's take the leap and go do it. And kind of true to Tom's word, it was 11 months before I got my first paycheck, and or my first commission check, not paycheck, and it was $1,837 11 months later. And
wow.
However, during that time, I had been grinding. I was working 10, 12 hours a day. I was lead generating. I was learning the business. I was networking and building relationships. And so a month later, I had a $20,000 payday.
Right.
And from there, my second year in the business, I made six figures. And from there, it grew and grew. And I really started to build a successful business in the commercial real estate world.
Sure. So pulling out a couple of nuggets in there, as a pretty productive residential real estate agent, I have people come up to me pretty regularly who want to talk about becoming an entrepreneur, starting their own businesses. And necessity is the mother of invention, right? So you had a little girl coming, you needed to make more money, you needed more control over your own schedule. And so you took that leap. Yeah. And everybody has their own motivations, that impetus to get them started. Mine was that I lost my job in the middle of one of the worst real estate economies in decades, right? I lost my job in, I guess it was October of 2010. And the only work that I had done since the early 2000s was in the residential real estate space for a training company, and then for another training company, but I also had my license. So I kind of did that nights and weekends. But I also always had that base compensation in my real job that supported me. And then when that got taken away unexpectedly.
This is Randy Sullivan with the Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team and the host of Bourbon Real Talk. Producing a podcast is time-consuming and expensive, and Bourbon Real Talk wants to maintain its integrity by not promoting products and services that it doesn't believe in. For this reason, I've opted to have my real estate team sponsor this program. The Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team has operated since 2008. We've sold almost 500 homes. We have proprietary programs that make a massive difference to the outcome of our clients, and we service the entire North Texas area. If you live in North Texas and you need to buy or sell a home, please give us a chance to explain how our services could benefit you. We understand that not all of our listeners live in North Texas. We also know that not all real estate agents are created equal. If you need a real estate agent outside of North Texas, the Randall Sullivan Home Selling Team has access to tools to help you find a highly qualified agent in your area. The service is free for you, and we stick around through the end of the process to help you with your transaction, even when we're not your agent. If you have a real estate transaction in your future, please reach out to us at randallsullivanteam.com, Facebook, Instagram, or just give us a call at 214-385-9101.
Then I realized my own vulnerability, because I felt like I was a good employee and that I was looking out for my employer's best interest and that I was contributing. But there were other outside, honestly, political factors that motivated the decision maker to feel like I wasn't a good long-term fit. And I thought, this keeps happening to me. Either people invite me in to work in their organization, promise me equity if I help them build it. That equity seems to never come. Or they decide that I'm not a fit when I know that I am. I don't want to put my destiny in other people's hands any longer. And I really had no choice.
So is that happening to you, or is that happening for you?
Probably for me, in retrospect. Yeah. But that's an important point for anybody out there that has an entrepreneurial spirit. You know, one of the things that I try to scare people out of it. Because if I can say something to you that scares you, you're not ready. Not saying that you won't ever be ready or that you don't have the personality for it, but you have to have a bigger why than money if you want to be successful in any endeavor, whether it be to make money or to influence the world or any endeavor. You have to have a bigger why than money, because at the end of the day, there are much easier ways to make money. And the same thing to do is to make your money doing those easier things that don't stress you as much, that are more predictable. And so that's what I learned in my journey, is that, you know, I started off and it was very, very rough. And there were times that, I mean, I think I was down to like 230 because I had saved up a little bit of money. And then I started my real estate practice. And I mean, I was like you, I was working 7 days a week. I was doing open houses every Saturday and Sunday without fail. I did all of my marketing efforts from 9 to 5, and I did all of my own paperwork from 5 until it was done. And sometimes that meant I fell asleep at my desk at 2:00 in the morning. I shut my office down every day, 5 days a week for the first year and a half that I worked there. Right. And I was the #1 individual agent in my office, my first year, or #2. I can't remember, 1 or 2 individual agent. And people looked at me like, man, you're so lucky. Right. And it's like, so what I've gotten in the habit of doing is that if I know someone well enough and they're sincerely asking me about going through this journey, whether it be real estate or any other endeavor, I tell them, I just want you to know, and I want you to think about me in this conversation that we had, because if you do this thing, there will come a day, a time, a moment where you are surveying the results of everything that you've done, and you will not be able to convince yourself that you have not irrevocably fucked up your life. You are going to look at where you're at and not see a way out and believe, I have ruined my life. And for me, that moment was so dire that I wondered that if I died and my life insurance paid, would my family be better with me gone than they would have if I stayed and worked from the point that I was at?
Brother, I've had that same thought on more than one occasion.
And so I tell people sincerely, your why has to be big enough that when you come to the conclusion that the world would be better with you dead than for you to continue, that you still don't quit. And if you can't do that, then just don't start.
My big why is to be the best possible example I can to my children, my wife, and to others who may look to me for inspiration, like in all aspects of my life. That's in business, personal finance, health and wellness, love and relationships, spirituality, charity and benevolence, and everything I do to shine as a positive example for others. Mm-hmm. That drives me. That motivates me. That picks me up off the floor, and that has me going. And when I finally figured that out, everything in my life started to change. It was pretty incredible that the dominoes started lining up and started falling. My business started improving. My relationships that I had caused harm to started to become into repair. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because when I defined those words, they were partially aspirational.
Right. It wasn't true yet.
It wasn't true yet. Because I'd look in the mirror and I'd be like, okay, you said this is your compass.
Right.
This is your true north. Are you living up to that?
I don't think it would work if it were already true.
And you might be right.
I think it's important for the vision that you're working toward to be greater than what currently exists. Otherwise, you're not progressing. You need to be working towards something. If you're not progressing, you're degressing. You cannot stay stagnant. It's just,
you're either going up or down.
I think it's the law of entropy or something. There is a rule that says that you cannot stay still. You're either going to degrade or you're going to improve.
There is, and for me, it's been a steady. Now, I can tell you since the 2012 to 2019 and the 7 years, so much has lined up to where I am living much, much more in alignment with those words.
Sure.
In everything I do today, in business, in health and wellness, in just my relationship with my children, everything I do is to be that right example.
Right.
And is it perfect? No. Mm-hmm. It won't ever be perfect. But I can tell you that one of my favorite words I learned a couple of years ago was the word Kaizen. And Kaizen is a Japanese word for, in essence, continuous improvement.
Okay.
That's what it boils down to, is that it came out of the business process, mm-hmm. that they would be continuously making incremental improvements to get better over time. And I just learned that word a couple of years ago, and it's the most beautiful word. And that is the way I choose to live my life. It's continuously improving in all of these different aspects of my life so that I can live in alignment with that purpose.
Gotcha. And so back to, you have decided to shut down the restaurant.
Yeah.
And you're filing personal bankruptcy.
Yeah.
How, during that time, were the people that were involved in that with you, were they supportive of you and encouraging you to recover, or did it cause damage to your relationships? Because you were married at the time, so obviously your wife is affected by this.
Sure.
My business you had a business partner.
Yeah.
So were your friends and family, were they encouraging you? Were they?
They were supportive of it. Frankly, I involved them in the decision prior to making the decision. I consulted with them and with many members of my family in that, and talked about, is this the right thing to do? Is it not the right thing to do? And so they were supportive of it. It hurt a lot of people. It hurt the employees that we had that were all of a sudden unemployed. It hurt some vendors we had.
Right.
That
they had trusted you, and
they had trusted us. We had balances with the vendors, and the bankruptcy eliminated those balances. And so and some of those vendors were personal friends. Mm-hmm. So it caused issues with those relationships there. They've been repaired later on, but it was a challenge.
Well, and the reason why I asked the question, I have observed that there are a lot of negative forces in everyone's life, so that when you come out with a vision, I even said this to my wife, I think yesterday, is she was asking, like, what do I see that's changed in our relationship over the last, 10 years? And my wife and I are working on projects together now.
Yeah.
Right. And I told her, I said, 10 years ago, I had a hope in my heart, a vision, and I would not share it with you because I did not trust that you wouldn't tear it down. And now I share my vision with you, and we work together to get it accomplished. Right. That's a huge difference. When you have a vision and you share it, just understand not all of your would-be supporters are going to support you. There will be a lot of people who tell you you're wrong, that you're insane, that you're taking too much risk. And then if they turn out to be kind of right and you end up filing Chapter 7 bankruptcy, they'll all say, I told you so.
It's easy to be a naysayer. It's easier for people to come out and tell you why it won't work. But you can't, as an entrepreneur, you can't, as a person with a personal vision, listen to the naysayers.
Right.
If you believe in what you're doing, if you truly believe in your path and how you can help people and how you can help your family and the vision for what you're doing, you follow that and you shut off everyone that's negative and you attach yourself to the positive right there. Not being Pollyanna, right? Not going, it's all going to work out great, but trusting in your ability to execute, trusting in the team you're going to build and surround yourself with, and trusting in the vision to get you where you're going.
Right.
It's imperative.
Right.
Don't listen to the naysayers. Look, I'll go on a tangent. Cancel your cable. Don't listen to the news. Don't ever watch the news. Don't ever do any of those things, and your life will get better. I haven't watched the news in 3 years, and I cannot tell you how much more positive my life is since
I quit after the last election. Cheers.
Cheers.
We even got rid of cable. Yeah.
As did I.
I was watching the news all day while I was working. I was angry all the time.
Yeah.
I was negative. I had a very negative outlook. But what I've learned is that if you go back and you study historically, societies have always thought they were fucked, right? Like even way back in the very beginning of the foundings of our country, if you read the writings of our founding fathers, they believed that if the other side gained any ground, that everything was going to come crumbling down. And it has always been that way. And life has a strong urge to sustain itself, whether it be a democracy or a plant, right? It struggles to survive. And so don't try to take the burdens of the whole world onto yourself.
Focus on the things that you can influence, and then influence them to the positive, and everything is probably going to work out. And if it's not going to work out, there was nothing you could have done about it anyway.
There's a lot of truth to that.
So. Yeah. So you made it through that very, very dark time. How'd you find the job as the GM at Razzoos? Did you know somebody? Or did you just look for a job and find it?
I just started looking. I was in the restaurant space. It's what I knew at the time. And so I just started looking. And frankly, it's a company that I respected. I ate there a lot.
Yeah.
I loved their concept, their vibe, their everything they had. So I did seek them out.
Yeah.
And wanted to go work with them.
You know, what's funny is I'm thinking about what would it be like if you were I don't know who you interviewed with, but say you're a regional director or something with Razzoos, and this guy comes in and he goes, "Hey, I want to be a general manager for you. I've got a lot of restaurant experience. A year and a half ago, I started a pizza joint, just filed bankruptcy. So I'm your guy. So great. I'm a great fit for you.
Yeah.
I know how to do scheduling and things like that. So you should hire me."
Right.
So even the fact that you had the balls to go into another restaurant after you just filed bankruptcy on your own restaurant, I think that's impressive, right?
Yeah. And here's what's interesting, because I remember that GM very well, or the regional manager that hired me, and he thought I was a little nuts going into the real estate business, and I think he doubted my potential success in the real estate business. And it was interesting that within a couple of years, I was generating more income than he was making in his role.
Right.
So
sure. Yeah. That often happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you go into that space, you save up some money, you get into commercial real estate. You and your wife are kind of in this fight together, right? Because she's working, you've got some money saved up, but it's a ticking time bomb, right? Because you're going to run out of money at some point.
Yeah.
And that happened to me as well. Like, I was down to my last couple $100 when my first commission check was $1,900 or something.
We were close. Yep.
Yeah. But then, closing started happening.
I just had a young man that was working with us on our team, and he just left a couple of weeks ago to go find a salary job. Mm-hmm. He was 8 months into the business, and
3 feet from gold.
3 feet from gold. And he 8 months into the business had done a fair amount of lead generation, had some deals, actually LOIs in there happening, getting ready. Now, granted, any of these LOIs, letter of intent, so any of these could fall out, but he was doing the work, and it was close. And it takes, with full disclosure, with everyone that comes on to work with us, or anyone that comes in the commercial real estate, it
takes a year.
Allocate at least 1 year, 2 years before you really understand the business. Like a year to start making money, 2 years before you truly understand the business. And it's close, but if you can't quite muscle it out there, then, and he felt like he couldn't, so he left, and it's not uncommon. There's a lot of washout, a lot of burnout.
That's an understatement. I think in real estate, I've heard 88 and 92% fall out in the first 18 months. The fallout ratio is super high, and I don't think that it's that different in other businesses. When you start a business, the odds of you making it through and being successful are probably pretty similar, which are low. But I don't think that it's because it's that impossible. I think it's because at some point people lose faith in themselves and hope, and they don't have that big why to drive them to get them to push past that point. And the reference that we made, 3 feet from gold, there's a true story about a gentleman who had begged, borrowed, and stole money from everybody he knew to pay for his gold excavation expedition. And when he gave up, he sold his claim to someone else, and that person that bought the claim continued where he left off, and he was 3 feet from gold. The guy dug 3 feet.
And it was one of the largest claims ever.
And hit one of the largest veins of gold that's ever been discovered. And he stopped 3 feet from one of the largest fortunes that's ever been discovered underground. And you just have to remember that
yeah, the work is hard and you're digging and you've seen no results and everyone around you is telling you that this is evidence. The universe is trying to tell you you were on the wrong piece of dirt. You're digging in the wrong place. There's nothing to be found here. You need to go and work on somebody else's piece of dirt and get paid hourly to dig their gold up for them. That's what people are going to tell you. And you don't know that you're quitting 3 feet from gold. My wife likes to play this game where she'll fantasize about, what if this were different, or what if that were different? I refuse to play that game, and I also hate all time travel movies, because all I can think about is all the ripple effects that would be caused by any minute change. And yes, there were times in my life where I screamed at God, asking him, begging him, can you please explain yourself? Because I did nothing without your permission, and it is all gone to rot. Why? And now I go, oh,
now I see why.
I had to go through that, or I don't get where I'm at now, which I'm happy about, right? It's all part of the process. And you never know where you're at in your journey. You just have to always understand. It's almost like a football game where there is no time clock. You just have to play until the other team quits. It doesn't matter how broken you are, how bruised you are, how tired you are. You just don't give up. And as long as you have a big enough why to keep you going, eventually the other side just gives up and you win. It's like it's how life works.
I want to bring up the power of gratitude for a moment, because as you're sitting there talking, it makes me think, and I had no concept of this in a previous life. Today, right. I think about it often, and we talk about entrepreneurship and how you got thrust into entrepreneurship with the loss of your job.
Right.
So you came into it. How mine kind of came in and out through a little bit of what I was doing, but then the bankruptcy, and then I got thrust into it I was going to miss the time with my daughter, so I got back into entrepreneurship. My friend Rock Thomas had said something to me once, and I loved it. It said, entrepreneurship is born out of necessity and nurtured over time. Mm-hmm. And Rock had also shined the light on this power of gratitude to me before. He was telling me a story about his car was broken down. It broke down, had a flat tire. Mm-hmm. He was in a suit, going to a meeting, has to get out and change the flat tire. He's like, negativity is running through his head right there. And he said he stopped himself, and he had to ask himself, what's great about this, right? What can I be grateful about this moment? He started looking around. He said, it's a beautiful sunny day. Mm-hmm. It's not raining outside.
It'd suck if it was raining.
The cars aren't rushing by me. I didn't break down on the highway, right? I'm on this side street, so the cars aren't rushing by me. I don't have the risk of death right here. And he started thinking through it. He said it totally shifted his mindset in that moment. And it's funny, I was working out by my pool a couple of days ago, and I texted Rock after the workout because I was getting bombarded with mosquitoes. They're just eating me nonstop, and I'm slapping them, I'm swatting them. I must have killed a dozen mosquitoes, and they keep coming after me. They're relentless. And I stopped to think, what could I be grateful about this for, right? And I was pissed off. I'm like, what's great about this? And I thought, you know what? The relentless spirit of these mosquitoes.
Right.
It's either succeed or die.
Right.
And
they don't care which one it is.
They don't care
at all.
And it shifted my mindset. I said, we could all use a little of that perspective. It's either succeed or die. And I texted Rock and I said, you know what? You planted this in my brain. What's great about this? And it was pretty cool. So, but it just gets me back to the power of gratitude. No matter what we're doing, no matter how shitty it is, no matter how bad it gets, if we can think about the things we're grateful for, because even in all of the negativity where you curse God for putting you in a bad situation, which I've done the same thing, please make this better, right? But if we could stop for a moment and think about, no matter what it is, what is or what could be great about this, and what could we be grateful for in that moment, it shifts our perspective.
It does. And there is truth to that adage, what does not kill you makes you stronger.
This is Randy Sullivan with RSHST Capital, LLC, and the host of Bourbon Real Talk. Producing a podcast is time-consuming and expensive, and Bourbon Real Talk wants to maintain its integrity by not promoting products or services that it doesn't believe in. For this reason, I have opted to have my funding company sponsor this program. RSHST Capital is the first of its kind funding company that provides pay-at-close funding to home sellers out of their equity. If you have a home to sell, need money for renovations or repairs to maximize your profit, money to stop pending foreclosure or to keep your mortgage current, or cash for really anything, then look into RSHST Capital. This program is simple. We verify that you have equity, approve you for a funding amount. You have access to that cash at practically a moment's notice for only a nominal fee. This program is raising sellers cash after closing by tens of thousands of dollars, stopping foreclosures and changing people's financial future. You pick your real estate agent, your contractor, and have access to actual cash or contracting expenses with zero upfront cost. This is a nationwide program, so if you have any curiosity about how it works, please look us up at rshstcapital.com, Facebook, or just give us a call at 214-385-9101.
I remember right when my real estate business started to do well, and my wife and I were thinking about, okay, now we can, because I had to rent a house. I couldn't buy a house. I had started a new business. I had plenty of money for the down payment. Thank God I didn't buy a house, because if I bought a house, I wouldn't have been able to make the payment. I needed that down payment money to live off of while I built my business. And I was renting, and my wife was not 100% happy with the situation. So I thought, I'm going to make it better. She went out of town, and I redid our landscaping. I trimmed up all of our bushes at our rent house, and I put in some flowers. And we didn't have a ton of money, but I got a couple of flowers, and I, bunched them together right on either side of the walkway, and it looked nice. But I didn't know very much about flowers. And so I got some flowers that apparently they needed a different sun exposure or something. And so these guys, they were struggling.
Yeah.
And I was bound and determined that I was going to save them. And so I was literally watering these guys twice a day. I was encouraging my kids, anytime you go outside to play, water these flowers. We want to keep them alive. And there was one side that was just always anemic, always struggling. I mean, it looked bad. It looked mostly dead, okay? And then the other side was always doing okay. And then finally, I realized I have made a mistake. I planted in bad soil. This was not a good choice. These flowers don't belong here. I'm not going to, just dig them up, but I'm not putting forth all this effort anymore. And something amazing happened. The flower that always looked good died immediately. I'm going to try not to cry. But the flower that struggled took off on its own, and it did not die. I mean, it looked like shit the whole time. And when I stopped watering it, it was strong enough to live on its own. And so I always think back on that. When I go through difficult times, and you will, if you are trying to give birth to a vision, it doesn't matter if you're starting your own business, if you want to have a nonprofit like Divine Equine, Bill and Cynthia out there, most of my listeners know about the organization that we work with. It doesn't matter what your vision is. If you're trying to give birth to it, all signs at some point are going to be pointing to the fact that you fucked up. You made a bad decision. It's not going to work. And what you don't know is that struggle is part of the process to grow the roots that you need to survive, right? And so when everyone's telling you, look at the evidence, just go, oh, you're looking at the part of the iceberg that's sticking out of the ocean. There's a whole lot underneath here you don't see. That's just growing. That's building. That's stability, right? And so that's always really, stuck with me. So to transition back to your story, You had moved into commercial real estate, pretty successful. Were there any times in your commercial real estate career where shit got real bad and it didn't look like you were going to make it?
Well, yeah. So
after that first year, because it sounded like your second year you made six figures.
That first year was I joined commercial real estate October 2002. 2003, 4 had some good years. 5, 6 was
amazing.
It was amazing, great time.
And 7.
Well, 7, 8. I mean, so residential hit in 7. It wasn't until June of 08 that really the commercial real estate markets got tanked, and I was having some phenomenal years. So, we were going boom times, going well. I was making great money. My wife was working for a home builder, making 6 figures a year, doing sales for a home builder. So we were double income, had 2 young kids. Life was good. Well, she wanted bigger, better, more. I acquiesced and said, okay. We ended up building this big, beautiful home. Literally, it was featured in magazines, right?
I know where this is going.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work out. So building this big, beautiful home where we built it, moved into it, featured in magazine. It's just amazing. Life is good. Residential market starts to go to shit. She loses her job. So there goes, 120 grand goes to zero on there. And, but I'm still doing well, still kind of cranking it. But this big house is expensive, and just paying the mortgage payment on that every month is expensive. Or the commercial market starts to turn. So mid 2008, they freeze up. And up to that point, most of what I did was in the land business. And land has a very long life cycle,
right? And
it was the first thing to die when the commercial markets dried up. And so everything I had
in the pipeline gone,
evaporated overnight. My expenses did not. They were still there. They were coming every month.
And so, when you get in this position, because I've been in this position on a much smaller scale, there's people that you care about, that you've made commitments to, that you feel an obligation to, almost like they're your child, and you don't want to let them down. And you want to believe this is just a blip. I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to be able to fix this. And you try not to cut expenses. You try not to lay off staff. You try not to offend your vendors. You try not to do all this stuff. And what you're really doing is digging a big ass hole for yourself.
A deeper hole. Well, we had a pretty big hole that was getting dug at that point. Now, luckily I had my own commercial real estate company at that time. I had ventured out on my own in mid 2006. So mid 8, actually I just joined up with Sperry Van Ness, but I didn't have a lot of overhead from my business perspective, but our home and expenses through that was just huge, insane, especially when there's no income coming in, or very little income coming in at the time. During that time also, prior to 2008, we had launched a new business for my wife. It was a retail boutique, which frankly just cost us money rather than making us money. So we've got even more money coming out right there, and then the markets collapse, and it exposed a lot of issues that we had in our life. And so it was exposing our own interpersonal issues that we had, certainly our financial issues, and
different visions,
the different page. We ended up putting our home on the market, trying to sell it. We quit making payments on the home. It was posted for foreclosure. I had visions of going back to 2001, 2 when we filed
Pizza
bankruptcy,
days.
And it was a miserable time. We ended up selling the house in a short sale. I remember, and that is a long process to go through. It's a miserable process to go through. And I remember being on the phone with the lender saying, "You come take the fucking keys and take it right now, because I'm tired of this." Because it was just a very adversarial relationship right there.
Sure.
But luckily we had a buyer that stuck with the process. We short sold the home. We ended up my wife and I going through a divorce, which was a really challenging time, you know, 2 young kids. But we made it through that time. I give my wife so much credit, my ex-wife, so much credit for her emotional intelligence in us not being the statistics where we hate each other,
Right.
and where it causes trauma and damage on the kids. Fast forward today, we live a mile apart from each other. Our kids are so fluid between the two houses. My ex-wife babysits my 3-year-old that I have with my wife now, and she loves him, and it's an incredible relationship. So I give her a lot of credit out of that. But we went through shit. We went through times. We went through a lot of struggles through that, and it was tough. But luckily we made it through with just a short sale out of there. That came through was a lot of debt that came through that challenging time right there, and there's a lot of rebuilding that came through that. So life is not just a path like this, right? There's a lot of this and this and this, but the trajectory is here,
up,
right? And you got to realize that the upward trend, but that's from sticking with it. That's from being dedicated and keeping on it right there, and not letting those moments kick you in the gut and keep you down.
Sure.
And you've got to keep pushing on, which I did, and ended up building a very successful commercial real estate business, which created income, which allowed me to venture into other things and to invest into other things and to create other businesses out of it.
You have been successful enough that you've been able to transition your focus on something that helps your big why, which is family.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, my baby girl was just a little baby. I remember going into a restaurant, and I was walking around with her, keeping her calm and just adoring her as I'm walking around. And this older gentleman came up to me, and he said, it's odd because I didn't know this guy. I don't know this guy. Some random stranger comes up and says, and he's kind of misting up in his eyes. And he said, don't ever let a day go by without telling that child how much you love her. And that struck me. I mean, it was in my nature that I would be doing that anyway.
Right.
But it struck me that he took the time to come up and share that bit of wisdom with me.
Right.
And it was one of the things that got me thinking, what can I do for my children to kind of leave a lasting impact? And about the time my daughter was 1 year old and my son was in the womb, they're 17 months apart, I decided to start just writing to them, writing journal entries to each of my kids. It was, one of those things that I could do. It was manageable. I said, I'm going to write just once a month. I'm going to write what's happening in your life, something that I could later pass down to them. And, fortuitously, I started each journal entry with their age and my age, so that later in life they could read it with context of where we were at the different stages of our life.
Right.
And it was really cool because that took me through the little milestone moments that they had as their development progressed, to highs and lows and birthdays and travel and adventure and things that we would do. And I would just document all of this stuff, again, with a cadence of about once a month. I'd kind of look through our photos or what we've been doing. I just kind of write about the moments that were happening in our lives. And it's also taken me through highs and lows. I wrote through, my divorce of their mom, the short sale of our house, all of those things. It's interesting. I recently reread those entries, and it's powerful to go through that. I mean, it was emotional to go through. It hurt to go through how much I was hurting at that time. I could feel it coming out.
Right.
But it's who we are. It's who I am or was and have become. And I wanted to have this to pass down to my children. And all along, it's been my intention that I would give these entries to them at their high school graduation. It would be 18 years of your life through my eyes. And I've shared this concept with probably hundreds of parents over the years, and many of which who've started journaling to their own children. And that's the most rewarding thing to me ever, is that people would send me texts of their journal entries and how much it meant to them that they're now doing this for their kids. And then more and more people had encouraged me over the years, like, Ken, you've got to do something with this. Like, you need to create some type of program so that people have a place where they can do this and journal to their children. And frankly, I wasn't in the right space. I've been thinking about this, again, reading through the old journal entries to my children. Ever since 2012, I had written in their journal entries, this is the year I'm going to create this product. And it didn't happen until just this year, 2019. So
wow.
7 years later, but I wasn't in the space. I didn't have the mental and physical space to be able to do that until about 2 years ago. I made some transitions in my real estate team. It freed up some of my mental and physical space. And I decided I'm going to make a commitment and going to build a product around this. So in December 2018, we started, December 2017, I guess. So all of 2018 and in 2019, we made the commitment, started the design of what is now known as Legacy of Love. And
did you hear that? Legacy of Love.
Legacyoflove.app is our website. It's Legacy of Love on the App Store and Google Play Store. But what it is, it's a cross-platform parent-to-child journaling application.
Okay.
Or grandparent-to-child or person-to-person, really. But it's designed as a parent-to-child or grandparent-to-child. It's a place to capture moments and memories, leave lessons before they fade with the passing time. Right? Think of your kids as the funniest little thing. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to remember that forever. That was so funny. And a month later, you're going, what was that? What was that he said? I mean, we were rolling on the floor. I said, I'd never forget that. And it's gone. And you never remember it again. And so what this allows us to do is to immediately go into a place and just jot down a quick little note of how funny that was. Or so when my 15-year-old son Knox was young, he used to leave me the sweetest little voicemails. Now I can't get 2 words out of him, right? He's 15. So, but when he was like 5 and 6 and 7, he used to call and leave me the sweetest little voicemails. And I would keep them forever. But as phone upgrades happened and stuff happened, they're gone. But now this is a platform where you can save that voicemail. And not just save the voicemail, but write down to your children about how impactful that voicemail was when you were having this shitty day and things were going wrong and nothing was going right. But you listened to that and it changed everything. And so it's this application that we've created that you can save those. You can save photos and videos and voice notes and everything. Kind of like a modern day, easy to use digital scrapbook. But it creates a chronological digital timeline of your child's life through your eyes. And that's been it's been what I've been doing for the past 15 years. And now it's a program that we've created that's my gift to the world. So it's out there. It's free. We have a few different versions, but we have a free version. So if someone has no money or no disposable income or no extra money they want to spend on this, they can use it. They can use it for free forever. They give it to their children and leave a legacy for future generations to come. If you want like enhanced features and extra photos and videos and the voice note feature, then we have a fairly inexpensive paid version that people can use. And again, something that people can pass down. Imagine that, but your great-great-grandchildren, seeing what you wrote to your children, hearing your voice, seeing your video. Imagine how cool it would be to see your great-great-grandfather or grandmother leaving those notes. So anyway, that's what we've created, something to pass on moments and memories to future generations.
Damn it, Ken. I was not planning on crying today. I thought we were going to talk about business. Now I'm all teary-eyed. But your program, even though it'd be beautiful, it'd be the most beautiful expression of parental love to give this to your kid the day they graduate or on your daughter's marriage day, which even thinking about makes me tear up. It'd be most important
if you died unexpectedly?
Sometimes we're not so lucky to get a few months or 6 months or anything like that, and it's just we're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And in taking the time to do something over time, it's there.
Wow. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up with that. I'm going to go get a tissue and dry my eyes because I'm a little bitch, and that's okay. I'm totally touching my emotions today. So if you want more information about its Legacy of Love,
legacyoflove.app.
Legacyoflove.app. It can be found in the App Store. It can be found on Google Play.
Yep.
If you want to get information from Ken, you can probably go to...
Well, you can email, if you want to connect with me, you can email me at ken@legacyoflove.app.
Wow. Awesome. And then if you want more information about Bourbon Real Talk, you can look us up on our website, bourbonrealtalk.com. You can look us up on Facebook and Instagram /Bourbon Real Talk. On the website, you're able to submit show ideas. You can fill out an application to be a show guest if you have an interesting topic. Everybody's life is actually interesting to everyone else, even though it doesn't seem interesting to you. And so there's always something to talk about. And if you woke up this morning and you were unsure whether or not somebody loved you, just know that I love you. And we'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk.